I never imagined finding a hidden document in my father's study would expose a $2 million betrayal, shattering our family's foundation, and forcing me to reveal the dark secret my sister had kept buried for 20 years. My name is Rebecca Mitchell, and this is the story of how uncovering the truth about an inheritance led me to choose between family loyalty and justice. The mahogany grandfather clock in my father's study struck 3, its deep, resonant chimes echoing through the empty mansion that had been my childhood home. I stood by the massive bay window, watching as autumn leaves danced across the manicured lawn, each golden swirl a reminder of how much Dad had loved this season. It had been exactly 2 months since his passing, and today was the official reading of his will. My hands trembled slightly as I smoothed down my black pencil skirt, a nervous habit I'd developed over years of dealing with my older sister Catherine's scrutiny. The room still smelled of Dad's favorite leather-bound books and pipe tobacco, a scent that now brought tears to my eyes. Family photos lined the walls, happy moments frozen in time when things were simpler, before Mom's death, before Catherine changed, before money became the invisible wall between us. I heard the click of heels on hardwood floors before I saw her reflection in the window. Catherine had arrived, perfectly put together as always in her designer suit and pearls, her auburn hair styled immaculately. She'd barely spoken to me at the funeral, keeping her distance with that air of superiority she'd perfected over the years. "Rebecca," she said coolly, placing her leather briefcase on Dad's antique desk. "I trust you're well?" I turned to face her, forcing a smile. "As well as can be expected, Catherine. Have you heard from Mr. Harrison? He should be here soon with the will." Catherine checked her watch, a gift from Dad on her 40th birthday. "He'll be here at 3:30. I spoke with him this morning to confirm." She paused, studying me with those calculating green eyes we'd both inherited from Mom. "I hope you're prepared for what's coming, little sister. Dad always did have his preferences." Something in her tone made my skin crawl. I'd seen that look before. The same expression she wore when she'd convinced our parents to send her to private school while I attended public. When she'd somehow managed to take credit for my achievements. When she'd slowly but surely positioned herself as the responsible daughter. The sound of car tires on gravel drew our attention. Through the window, I watched Mr. Harrison, our family lawyer for the past 30 years, making his way up the curved driveway. He looked older than I remembered, his silver hair thinner, his shoulders slightly stooped under the weight of his charcoal suit. Catherine moved to the door, her heels clicking purposefully across the hardwood. "I'll let him in." "Why don't you make yourself useful and put on some coffee, Rebecca? This might take a while." I bit back a retort, reminding myself that today wasn't about our usual power dynamics. This was about Dad, about honoring his last wishes, about family. If only I'd known then what I know now, that Catherine had already set her plan in motion, that the will we were about to read had been tampered with, that my sister had spent months manipulating our father during his final days. As I made my way to the kitchen, navigating the familiar hallways lined with generations of family portraits, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Maybe it was the way Catherine had insisted on being Dad's primary caregiver during his last months, keeping me at arm's length with excuses about my teaching job and my busy schedule. Or perhaps it was the whispered phone calls I'd overheard, the mysterious meetings with lawyers I wasn't told about, the sudden changes in Dad's investment portfolio that Catherine had orchestrated as his power of attorney. The coffee maker gurgled to life, its aroma filling the kitchen where Mom had once taught us both to bake, where family dinners had been filled with laughter before everything changed. I pulled 3 cups from the cabinet, Dad's favorite set, bone china with delicate blue flowers, and arranged them on a silver tray. Through the kitchen door, I could hear Catherine's voice, warm and solicitous as she greeted Mr. Harrison. She'd always been good at that, presenting the perfect daughter image to the outside world. Few people saw what lay beneath that polished exterior, the calculation behind every gesture, the subtle manipulation in each carefully chosen word. As I carried the coffee tray back to the study, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the hallway mirror. At 35, I looked more like Mom than ever. The same heart-shaped face, the same quiet determination in my eyes. Mom would have seen through Catherine's act, I thought. She would have known what to do. Little did I know that in the next few hours, my world would be turned upside down. The will reading would reveal not just the distribution of Dad's considerable estate, but the first thread that would eventually unravel Catherine's carefully constructed web of lies. The $2 million was just the beginning. The real story lay in what my sister had done to get it, and the secret she'd been desperate to keep buried. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat as he spread the documents across Dad's mahogany desk, his weathered hands trembling slightly. I couldn't help but notice how Catherine had positioned herself directly beside him, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the leather arm of Dad's executive chair. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the study windows, creating an almost theatrical atmosphere for what was about to unfold. "Before we begin," Mr. Harrison said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, "I want to express again how sorry I am for your loss. Charles was not just a client, but a dear friend." He paused, his eyes lingering on the family photo behind the desk, Dad beaming proudly between Catherine and me at her law school graduation. Catherine leaned forward, her pearl necklace catching the light. "We appreciate that, James, but perhaps we should proceed with the reading. I have several important meetings later today." Her tone was honey-sweet, but I caught the underlying steel, the same voice she'd used throughout our childhood to get her way. I sank into the worn leather armchair by the bookcase, the one where I used to curl up and read while Dad worked. The familiar scent of leather and old books brought back memories of simpler times, before Mom's death 10 years ago had created the first real rift between Catherine and me. Back then, we'd handled our grief differently. I'd thrown myself into my teaching career, working with underprivileged kids, while Catherine had focused on climbing the corporate ladder, eventually becoming a partner at her law firm. Mr. Harrison began reading the will, his voice steady and professional. I watched Catherine's face, noticing how her expression remained carefully neutral, though her eyes sparked with something that looked suspiciously like triumph. The initial provisions were standard: personal effects, family heirlooms, Mom's jewelry collection to be split between us. Then came the bombshell. "To my eldest daughter, Catherine Ellen Mitchell, I leave the sum of $2 million from my investment portfolio, along with full ownership of Mitchell Industries and all its subsidiaries." The words hit me like a physical blow. Catherine's slight smile widened as Mr. Harrison continued reading, but I could barely hear him over the roaring in my ears. $2 million? The entire company? This couldn't be right. Dad had always talked about splitting everything equally between us, had always emphasized fairness in every family decision. "And to my younger daughter, Rebecca Ann Mitchell, I leave the sum of $50,000, along with the family home and its contents." The disparity was staggering. Yes, the house was valuable, but nothing compared to the liquid assets and the company Catherine had just inherited. I felt the walls of the study closing in, memories flooding back of recent months, Catherine's increased presence during Dad's illness, the whispered phone conversations, the new lawyers she'd brought in to help with estate planning. "There must be some mistake," I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant and strange. "Dad always said he would split everything equally. He believed in fairness, in taking care of both of us." Catherine's laugh was soft and condescending. "Oh, Becca, always so naive." Dad clearly recognized who was better equipped to handle the family business. After all, what does a high school teacher know about running a multi-million-dollar company? Mr. Harrison shifted uncomfortably in his chair, shuffling papers with unnecessary vigor. I noticed how he avoided meeting my eyes, his usual warm demeanor replaced by something that looked almost like guilt. "Mr. Harrison," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. When exactly was this will drafted? The last time Dad mentioned his estate plans to me, things were very different. The final version was signed 3 weeks before your father's passing, he replied, still not meeting my gaze. Catherine helped arrange the meetings, given her legal background and understanding of the situation. Understanding of the situation. The phrase echoed in my head as I watched Catherine gather the documents, her movements precise and practiced. I thought about those final weeks of Dad's life, how his medication had left him confused and disoriented, how Catherine had controlled access to his room, citing his need for rest whenever I tried to visit. If there are no other questions, Catherine said, rising smoothly from her chair, I really must be going. The board is expecting me for a preliminary meeting about the company transition. She paused at the door, her perfect composure cracking, just slightly as she added, Don't worry, little sister. You can keep living in the house. For now. Consider it my way of taking care of family. As the door closed behind her, I remained in Dad's study, the gravity of what had just happened slowly sinking in. Mr. Harrison busied himself with his briefcase, muttering something about needing to file paperwork, but I barely heard him leave. My eyes were drawn to Dad's desk, to the careful organization system he'd maintained for decades. Something about it looked different, slightly off, as if someone had recently reorganized it. Standing on shaky legs, I moved to the desk, running, my fingers along the familiar wood grain. Dad had always said that the truth leaves traces, that nothing important can ever be completely hidden. As I opened the top drawer, I noticed a slight gap in the wooden panel at the back, a secret compartment Dad had shown me years ago. My heart pounding, I pressed the hidden catch. Inside lay a single envelope, yellowed with age, addressed to Catherine in handwriting I didn't recognize. As I held it up to the fading light, I had no way of knowing that this innocent-looking envelope contained the key to unraveling everything. The truth about Catherine's past, the real reason behind her desperate grab for control, and a secret that would shake our family to its core. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope, the paper crackling with age. Inside was a letter dated 20 years ago, written in neat, feminine handwriting. The first line made my blood run cold. Dear Catherine, I know what really happened the night of the accident. The truth about Jennifer must come out. Jennifer. The name stirred something in my memory, a childhood friend of Catherine's who had disappeared during their senior year of high school. The official story was that she had run away, but there had always been whispers, rumors that never quite died. My phone buzzed, making me jump. Catherine's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, my eyes fixed on the letter. As I read further, the pieces started falling into place. Jennifer hadn't run away at all. The letter detailed a confrontation between her and Catherine on the old bridge outside town, an argument about money missing from the school fundraiser, a push that wasn't meant to be fatal. The study suddenly felt airless. I walked to the window, throwing it open, gulping in the cool autumn air. My mind raced back to that time. Catherine's sudden withdrawal from school activities, Dad's late-night meetings with lawyers, the large donation to the school building fund that had seemed so generous at the time. The sound of footsteps in the hallway snapped me back to reality. I quickly folded the letter, tucking it into my jacket pocket just as Catherine burst into the study. "What are you still doing here?" she demanded, her earlier polish giving, way to something harder, more desperate. "I've been calling you." I turned to face her, trying to keep my expression neutral. Just saying goodbye to Dad's space. It's a lot to process, Catherine. The will, the company, everything. She moved closer, her eyes scanning the desk. "Have you been going through his things?" "That's really not appropriate, Rebecca. As executor of the estate. As executor of a will that doesn't make sense," I cut in, finding strength in my anger. Dad would never have left things this way, Catherine. Not unless someone influenced him when he was vulnerable. Catherine's laugh was sharp, brittle. Are you accusing me of something? Because I'd be very careful about making allegations you can't prove. I was there for Dad at the end, taking care of him while you were off playing teacher to other people's children. I was teaching because you told me Dad was too tired for visitors. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Every time I tried to see him, you had an excuse. For months, Catherine, months. Because I was protecting him, she shouted, her composure finally cracking. I was making sure his legacy was preserved, that the company stayed in capable hands. What would you have done with it? Turned it into a charity? I pulled the letter from my pocket, holding it up without a word. The color drained from Catherine's face as she recognized the handwriting. Where did you get that? Her voice was barely a whisper. It doesn't matter where I got it. What matters is what it says about Jennifer, about what really happened that night. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Did Dad know? Is that how you convinced him to change the will? Blackmail? Catherine moved with surprising speed, lunging for the letter, but I was faster. She stumbled, catching herself on the desk, sending Dad's favorite paperweight crashing to the floor. The sound echoed through the study like a gunshot. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Catherine hissed, straightening up. That letter is ancient history. Jennifer's family moved away years ago. No one cares anymore. I care, I said quietly. And I think the police might care too. 20 years isn't too long for a manslaughter investigation, is it, Catherine? She stared at me, and for a moment I saw something I'd never seen in my sister's eyes before. Fear. Then her mask slipped back into place, cold and calculating. Think very carefully about what you're doing, Rebecca, she said, her voice low and dangerous. That house you inherited? The property taxes alone will bankrupt you on a teacher's salary. And teaching jobs can be so precarious these days. One phone call to the school board about concerns over your stability. The threat hung in the air between us. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The Catherine I'd grown up with, the sister who had once protected me from schoolyard bullies who had held my hand at Mom's funeral, was gone. In her place stood someone consumed by greed and fear, willing to destroy anyone who threatened her carefully constructed facade. Get out, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Get out of Dad's study. Get out of this house. You may have stolen his money, Catherine, but you won't steal my dignity, too. She hesitated for a moment, then gathered her belongings with deliberate slowness. At the door, she paused. You have 24 hours to forget about that letter, Rebecca. After that, I can't be responsible for what happens. As her heels clicked down the hallway, I sank into Dad's chair, the letter heavy in my pocket. The grandfather clock chimed again, marking the hour. In 24 hours, Catherine would be presenting herself to the board of Mitchell Industries as their new owner. In 24 hours, she would begin liquidating Dad's legacy to fuel her own ambitions, unless I stopped her. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Emma Martinez, investigative reporter for the Springfield Herald. My finger hovered over the call button as I weighed 2 decades of family loyalty against the bitter taste of betrayal. The choice, I realized, had already been made the moment Catherine had chosen money over truth, power over family. The evening shadows grew longer as I sat in Dad's study. The letter from Jennifer's mother spread out before me, my hands trembling as I dialed Emma Martinez's number. The call went to voicemail. Emma, it's Rebecca Mitchell. I have a story you might be interested in. It's about Mitchell Industries and... I paused, the weight of what I was about to do hitting me full force. It's about a 20-year-old disappearance that never made the papers. After hanging up, I began methodically, going through Dad's desk drawers, my mind racing with memories. Another discovery made my heart skip. A small notebook. Dad's familiar handwriting cramped and shaky in his final months. The entries were sporadic, but what they revealed made my blood run cold. Catherine insists on new lawyers. Don't trust. Something wrong with paperwork. Ask to see Rebecca. Catherine says she's too busy. Doesn't sound right. Pills make everything fuzzy. Catherine handling all decisions now. Each entry grew more confused, more desperate. The final one, dated just days before his death, was barely legible. Must tell Rebecca. Truth about money. Catherine threatened. Jennifer's mother. My phone buzzed. Emma Martinez. Rebecca? I got your message. Can we meet tonight? I glanced at the darkening window, knowing Catherine might have people watching the house. Not here. Do you know Carter's Coffee? On Maple? It's open late. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I gathered the letter and notebook, making copies on Dad's old scanner before securing the originals in his hidden wall safe. The one Catherine didn't know about. As I drove through the quiet streets of our hometown, memories flooded back. Catherine and Jennifer walking home from school, their heads bent together in conversation. The sudden tension in our house after Jennifer's disappearance. The whispered arguments between my parents that stopped whenever I entered the room. Carter's Coffee was nearly empty when I arrived. Emma was already there, her reporter's notebook open, a steaming cup untouched before her. She'd aged since our high school. Days when she'd written for the school paper, but her sharp, intelligent eyes were the same. Before we start, Emma said as I sat down, you should know I've been trying to crack the Jennifer Myers case for years. Every anniversary, I pitch it to my editor, and every time, I hit walls. Nobody wants to talk. Records disappear. Your sister's name comes up, then vanishes from official documents. I pulled out the copies I'd made. Maybe this will help break down those walls. For the next hour, I walked Emma through everything. The letter, Dad's notebook, the suspicious circumstances of the will. She took notes rapidly, occasionally stopping me to clarify details. This is dynamite, Rebecca, she said finally. But you need to understand what you're doing. Going public with this won't just affect Catherine. It'll impact Mitchell Industries, hundreds of employees, your family's reputation. What about Jennifer's family? I countered. Don't they deserve to know the truth? And what about Dad's legacy? Catherine manipulated him when he was sick, took advantage of his condition, to steal everything he built. Emma studied me carefully. You're sure about this? Once I start digging, I can't stop, even if you change your mind. My phone buzzed again, a text from Catherine. Thought about what I said? Time's running out, little sister. Looking. At her message, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I'm sure, but there's something else you should know. I pulled up the company's financial records on my tablet, documents I'd accessed using Dad's old passwords. The $2 million? It's not just about the inheritance. Look at these transactions from the last 3 months. Emma's eyes widened as she scrolled through the records. Shell companies, offshore accounts. Catherine's been siphoning money from Mitchell Industries for months. She needed control of the company to cover her tracks, I said, the pieces finally fitting together. The inheritance was just the final step. She's been planning this for years. As we talked, the coffee shop began closing around us. Emma had filled several pages with notes, her expression growing more intense. With each revelation, I'll need a few days to verify everything, get corroborating sources. Are you somewhere safe? Catherine sounds dangerous when cornered. I thought about the empty house waiting for me, filled with shadows and memories. I'll stay with my friend, Claire. Catherine doesn't know where she lives. Emma gathered her notes, her face serious. Be careful, Rebecca. Stories like this. They can take unexpected turns. And Catherine sounds like someone with a lot to lose. Walking to my car, I felt exposed under the streetlights, jumping at every shadow. The weight of what I'd set, in motion, pressed down on me. Tomorrow, Catherine would expect my surrender, expect me to fall in line like I always had. Instead, she would face the consequences of 20 years of secrets and lies. My phone buzzed one final time, an email notification. Catherine had sent a draft contract, offering to amend the inheritance if I signed a non-disclosure agreement. Her last attempt at buying my silence. With trembling fingers, I deleted the email. There would be no more deals, no more secrets. As I drove through the quiet streets toward Claire's house, Dad's voice echoed in my memory. The truth always finds its way to the light, sweetheart. Always. Claire's cozy bungalow on the outskirts of town felt like stepping into another world. String lights twinkled along the porch railings, and the scent of jasmine from her garden wrapped around me like a protective blanket. My best friend since college stood in the doorway, her artist's smock splattered with paint, concern etched on her face. "I opened a bottle of that red wine you like," she said, ushering me inside. "Now tell me everything. Your text scared me half to death." Amikyai. Living room was Claire's studio space, canvases propped against walls, brushes soaking in jars. A half-finished landscape dominated one corner, the old bridge where Jennifer had disappeared, though Claire couldn't have known its significance. I sank into her paint-stained couch, the events of the day crashing over me like waves. "You? Remember Jennifer Myers?" I asked, watching Claire's expression shift from confusion to recognition. "The girl who vanished our senior year? Of course. Catherine was friends with her, wasn't she?" Claire poured wine into mismatched mugs, proper glasses long since sacrificed to her artistic pursuits. I pulled out my phone, showing her the photo I'd taken of the letter. As she read, her eyes widened, hand covering her mouth. "Oh my God, Rebecca. All this time. And now Catherine's stolen your inheritance too?" "It's worse than that," I said, explaining about the offshore accounts, the company's finances, Dad's suspicious change of will. Claire listened intently, her artist's eye for detail picking up things I'd missed. "The timing," she said suddenly. "Catherine started moving money right after your dad's diagnosis, didn't she? She knew he was vulnerable." A sharp knock at the door made us both jump. Claire peered through the curtains, then relaxed. "It's just Mrs. Peterson from next door." But when she opened the door, it wasn't the elderly neighbor, but a tall man in an expensive suit. "Rebecca Mitchell?" he asked, his voice clipped and professional. "I represent Catherine Mitchell and Mitchell Industries. I have some documents that require your immediate attention." Claire moved to close the door, but he wedged his foot in the gap. "Ms. Mitchell, I should warn you that failing to comply could result in serious legal consequences." "Get off my property," Claire said, her usual gentle demeanor hardening. "Or I'm calling the police." The lawyer smiled thinly, placing his business card in the doorframe. "Very well, but Ms. Mitchell should know that her sister is prepared to take action regarding certain historical matters. Family loyalty only extends so far." After he left, I collapsed back onto the couch, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. There were 12 missed calls from Catherine, 3 voicemails and an email with the subject line, "Final warning." "You can't stay here," Claire said, already gathering my things. "If they found you this quickly, they'll be watching the house." "But where can I go?" The weight of my situation pressed down on me. Catherine had the resources of an entire company behind her, an army of lawyers at her disposal. Claire's face lit up with sudden inspiration. "My aunt's cabin, up in the mountains, about 2 hours from here. No internet, spotty cell service, completely off the grid. Catherine would never think to look there." The idea of escape, of silence and space to think, was tempting. But running felt like letting Catherine win. I can't hide forever, Claire. Not forever, she agreed, already pulling up directions on her phone. Just until Emma can break the story. Give her time to do it right, gather evidence that Catherine can't bury. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Got confirmation about Jennifer's mother. She's alive, living in Arizona. Want to talk to us? Give me 72 hours. 3 days. I could disappear for 3 days. Claire insisted on driving, taking back roads and checking regularly to ensure we weren't followed. As the city lights faded behind us and the mountain roads grew steeper, I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. The night was clear, stars emerging like scattered diamonds across the velvet sky. I remember when you and Catherine used to come to my art shows in college, Claire said softly, navigating a sharp curve. She always seemed so proud of you then. What happened? I stared out the window at the passing shadows of trees. Money happened. Power. The fear of losing both. I thought about the letter, safely stored in a sealed envelope in my bag. And maybe guilt. Living with a secret like that for 20 years. It must eat away at your soul. The cabin appeared ahead, a solid shadow against the starlit sky. As Claire pulled up the gravel driveway, motion sensors triggered soft outdoor lights. The place was small but well-maintained, with a wraparound porch and a view of the valley below. There's firewood stacked out back, Claire said, helping me with my bags. Emergency generator if you need it. Food in the pantry. And most importantly, she pointed to a metal lockbox bolted to the wall. The Wi-Fi password. Reception's terrible, but it works well enough to send emails. Inside, the cabin smelled of pine and wood smoke. Claire showed me around. 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, a living area with a stone fireplace. It felt secure, isolated, safe. I'll come check on you tomorrow, Claire promised, hugging me tightly. Try to get some rest. And Rebecca? She paused at the door. You're doing the right thing. Jennifer's family deserves to know the truth. After she left, I stood on the porch, listening to the night sounds. Crickets, distant owls, the rustle of wind through trees. My phone showed 1 bar of service and another missed call from Catherine. I switched it off. In the distance, storm clouds gathered over the mountains, promising rain. Somehow it felt fitting. The calm I'd found here was temporary, the storm approaching inevitable. But for the first time since discovering the letter, I felt ready to face it. The first night in the cabin stretched endlessly before me. Rain began to fall, drumming against the wooden roof in a hypnotic rhythm. I lit a fire in the stone fireplace, its warm glow casting dancing shadows across the rough-hewn walls. With nothing but time and silence surrounding me, memories I'd long suppressed began to surface. I pulled out my old journal from my bag, a habit I'd maintained since childhood, much to Catherine's constant mockery. Still writing down your feelings like a teenager, Becca? She'd say, that familiar note of condescension in her voice. But now, these documented memories might hold clues I'd missed. Flipping back to entries from 20 years ago, I found what I was looking for, the weeks surrounding Jennifer's disappearance. My teenage self had noticed things, small details that seemed insignificant then, but now painted a disturbing picture. Catherine came home late again tonight. Her clothes were wet even though it hasn't rained. She was arguing with Dad in his study. I couldn't hear what about, but she was crying. She's never crying. Jennifer wasn't at school today. Catherine says she probably ran away to Los Angeles like she always talked about, but something feels wrong. She left all her things behind, even her favorite leather jacket. Dad made a huge donation to the school today, $50,000 for the new library. Catherine's been spending a lot of time with the lawyers. Mom looks worried all the time. A loud crack of thunder made me jump, spilling tea across the journal's pages. As I blotted them dry, a folded newspaper clipping fell from between the Pages. It was Jennifer's missing person report, the grainy photo showing a smiling teenager with wild dark hair and defiant eyes. The same eyes that had stared down Catherine at the school fundraiser meeting, according to the letter. I spread everything out on the cabin's wooden table. The letter, Dad's notebook, my journal entries, the financial records I'd copied. Patterns began to emerge. The school donation had been made the day after Jennifer disappeared. Catherine had changed that night, becoming more controlled, more ambitious. And now, 20 years later, she was using the same tactics, lawyers, threats, money, to maintain control. My laptop connected to the cabin's weak Wi-Fi, and I began searching. News archives. Jennifer's disappearance had made headlines for weeks, then months, before fading into the background of small-town mysteries. But one article caught my eye, an interview with Jennifer's mother 6 months after the disappearance. Jennifer knew something, Mrs. Myers had said. Something about the fundraiser money. She was going to report it, do the right thing. Then she vanished. The fundraiser. I remembered it clearly now. Catherine had been the treasurer, responsible for thousands of dollars in donations. The money that was supposed to build a new gymnasium had somehow dwindled to nothing, with only vague explanations about administrative costs. My phone buzzed on the table. I'd turned it back on briefly to check for messages from Emma. Instead, there was a new email from an anonymous address. The subject line made my blood run cold. I know what Catherine did. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside was a single image, a photograph I'd never seen before, clearly taken the night Jennifer disappeared. It showed the old bridge, 2 figures in the distance, one pushing the other. The timestamp placed it minutes before Jennifer was last seen. There's more where this came from, the message read. Meet me tomorrow, sunrise, the bridge. I stared at the photo until my vision blurred. The quality was poor, the figures barely distinguishable. But I knew in my gut what I was seeing. The moment Catherine's perfect life began and Jennifer's ended. A fresh wave of thunder rattled the cabin's windows. I moved to the fireplace, adding another log, watching the flames consume it. Like Catherine had consumed our family's legacy, Dad's trust, my inheritance. Like she'd consumed the truth about that night at the bridge. The rain intensified, becoming a solid wall of sound. In this isolated cabin, surrounded by darkness and storm, I felt both protected and trapped. The anonymous email posed a new threat. Or was it an opportunity? The bridge had been Jennifer's last known location, the place where one secret had created a 20-year cascade of lies. I opened my journal to a fresh page and began to write, not stopping until the sky began to lighten behind the mountain peaks. The decision I'd reached filled 3 pages, my handwriting becoming steadier as my resolve strengthened. I would meet the anonymous photographer. I would face the bridge where it all began. And this time, I would not let Catherine bury the truth. As dawn approached, I packed my evidence carefully into my bag. Claire had left her car keys on the counter along with a note. Be careful. Call if you need me. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean, the air sharp with the scent of wet earth and pine. The old bridge was an hour's drive away. I had time to prepare, to steady my nerves. But first, I sent 2 messages. To Emma. New, evidence emerging. Meet me at the bridge at sunrise. Bring your camera. To Claire. If you don't hear from me by noon, send everything in the sealed envelope to the police. The cabin had served its purpose, giving me space to think, to connect the dots, to find my courage. Now it was time to face the past, not just Catherine's past, but our family's legacy of secrets and silence. The drive to Miller's Bridge felt like traveling through time. The old access road was barely maintained now, crumbling asphalt giving way to gravel and mud from the night's storm. My headlights cut through the pre-dawn mist, illuminating the skeletal trees that lined the approach. 20 years ago, this had been a popular spot for high school students, remote enough for privacy, close enough to town for quick escapes. I parked Claire's car in the overgrown lot, killing the engine but leaving the keys in the ignition. The bridge loomed ahead, its rusted metal framework rising like a prehistoric skeleton in the gray morning light. Yellow police tape, faded and tattered, still clung to one of the support beams, a ghost of the original investigation. As I waited, I pulled out the newspaper clippings I'd collected during my night of research. The story had evolved over those first crucial weeks after Jennifer's disappearance. Week 1. Local teen missing. Foul play not suspected. Week 2. Search expands for missing honor student. Week 3. Family offers reward for information. Week C. Police scale back search efforts. But it was a small article from Week 6 that had caught my attention, buried on page 12. Easily missed. Missing teen's bank account shows large deposit before disappearance. The money had never been explained. The lead apparently dropped. Now I knew why. The amount matched exactly what had gone missing from the school fundraiser. A car's headlights swept across the bridge and I tensed. But it was Emma's familiar sedan pulling up beside me, the reporter's face grim in the growing light. "You're not going to believe what I found," she said, climbing out with her camera bag. "I managed to track down the original detective who worked Jennifer's case. He's retired now, living in Florida. The things he told me about Catherine's involvement, the evidence that mysteriously disappeared." Another set of headlights appeared at the far end of the bridge. A black SUV with tinted windows rolled to a stop, its engine idling. "That's not all," I said, showing Emma the anonymous email. "Someone else knows what happened here." The SUV's door opened. A figure emerged. Not the mysterious photographer I'd expected, but an elderly woman I recognized instantly from old news photos, though her hair had gone from black to silver. "Mrs. Myers," Emma breathed. Jennifer's mother walked slowly toward us, her cane tapping against the bridge's metal surface. Despite her age, her eyes were sharp, focused, missing nothing. I was wondering when someone would finally start asking. "The right questions," she said, her voice stronger than her fragile appearance suggested. "I've waited 20 years for this moment." From her bag, she withdrew a thick manila envelope. "Jennifer kept records," she explained, "of everything. The missing fundraiser money, the fake receipts, the threats Catherine made when Jennifer discovered the truth. My daughter was many things, but she wasn't careless. She gave me copies of everything the night before she disappeared." "But why wait so long to come forward?" I asked, struggling to process this new information. Mrs. Myers' laugh was bitter. "Your father paid me a visit the day after Jennifer disappeared. Explained how accusations without proof could lead to difficult legal situations. How a grieving mother might lose her house fighting a lengthy court battle. Then he offered me enough money to start a new life somewhere else. I took it." She paused, her eyes filling with tears. "I've hated myself every day since." Emma was already photographing the documents Mrs. Myers had brought, her camera clicking rapidly in the growing light. "These bank statements," she said. "They match the transfers Catherine's been making from Mitchell Industries. Same pattern, same offshore accounts. She's been using the company to launder money for years." "It started with the fundraiser," Mrs. Myers confirmed. "Catherine had gambling debts, serious ones. She thought she could take the fundraiser money, place one big bet, pay it back before anyone noticed. When she lost everything, she panicked. Jennifer found out, threatened, to expose her. They argued here, on this bridge." She pointed with her cane to the spot where the photograph had shown two figures struggling. "I have the photo," I said, pulling up the anonymous email. Mrs. Myers shook her head. "That wasn't from me, but I'm not surprised others know. Secrets this big cast long shadows." The sun was rising now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The same colors it had been, I realized, The morning Jennifer's body was finally found downstream, caught in the branches of a fallen tree. "I've got enough to run the story," Emma said quietly. "But Catherine won't go down without a fight. She'll claim the documents are fake, that Mrs. Myers is lying for revenge or money." "She can claim what she wants," Mrs. Myers said, steel in her voice. "I've got the original copies in a safety deposit box, and tomorrow morning, I'm meeting with the district attorney. 20 years is a long time, but there's no statute of limitations on what happened to my Jennifer." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. "Catherine." The message was short. "Where are you? We need to talk. Now." I looked at the bridge, at the spot where one moment of violence had spawned decades of deception. At Mrs. Myers, who had carried the weight of silence for 20 years. At Emma, whose pursuit of truth might finally bring justice. "Tell her." "To meet you at the family house," Emma suggested. "It's time to end this." I texted Catherine back with trembling fingers. "Meet me at Dad's house in 1 hour. No lawyers." Her response was immediate. "Finally coming to your senses?" The drive back to the family estate felt surreal in the morning light. Emma followed in her car, Mrs. Myers beside her, while all the evidence was securely stored in my bag. We had agreed on a plan. Emma and Mrs. Myers would wait in the study, hidden from immediate view, while I confronted Catherine. The house looked different somehow. Smaller, less imposing than it had just days ago. The perfectly manicured lawn, the pristine windows, the immaculate facade. All of it seemed like a stage set now, carefully constructed to hide the rot beneath. I unlocked the front door, walking straight to Dad's study. The morning sun streamed through the bay windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Emma and Mrs. Myers positioned themselves behind the heavy velvet curtains, their presence giving me strength. At exactly 9 o'clock, I heard the distinctive sound of Catherine's heels on the marble floor. She appeared in the doorway, impeccably, dressed as always, but I noticed small signs of strain, her slightly smudged mascara, a button misaligned on her blazer. "I see you've come to your senses," she said, striding into the room. "The NDA is ready to sign. Once you do, we can discuss a more equitable distribution of assets." I remained seated in Dad's chair, my fingers tracing the worn leather armrests. "Tell me about Jennifer Myers, Catherine." She froze mid-step, her composure cracking for just a fraction of a second before recovering. "What about her? That's ancient history, completely irrelevant to our current situation. Is it?" I opened my bag slowly, removing the documents one by one. The missing fundraiser money, the gambling debts, the argument on the bridge. It's all connected, isn't it? A pattern that started 20 years ago and never stopped. Catherine's laugh was sharp, brittle. "What exactly are you implying?" "Jennifer ran away. Everyone knows that. And if you're trying to distract from your baseless accusations about Dad's will..." "We found the money trail," I interrupted, laying out the bank statements. "From the fundraiser straight to your offshore accounts. The same accounts you're using now to siphon money from Mitchell Industries. Dad figured it out at the end, didn't he? That's why you had to act so quickly." Her face hardened. "You're delusional, and these documents are obviously fake. My lawyers will..." "Your lawyers can't help you anymore, Catherine." I nodded toward the curtains. Emma stepped out first, her camera already recording. Then Mrs. Myers emerged, and Catherine's facade crumbled completely. She staggered backward, gripping the doorframe for support. "Hello, Catherine," Mrs. Myers said quietly. "You've aged well. Success must agree with you." This is a setup," Catherine stammered. "You can't prove anything. It was 20 years ago." "Actually, we can prove everything," Emma interjected. "The original detective kept copies of all the evidence that mysteriously disappeared." Fascinating reading. But what really interests me is how the same financial pattern continues today with Mitchell Industries. Catherine's eyes darted between us, calculating. "What do you want? Money?" Fine. Name your price. I want the truth, I said, standing up. I want you to face what you did. To Jennifer, to Dad, to our family. No more buying silence. No more threats, no more lies. You don't understand, Catherine's voice cracked. I never meant to. It was an accident. Jennifer was going to ruin everything. She wouldn't listen, wouldn't take the money I offered. We fought. She slipped. I panicked. So you let her family think she ran away? My voice rose. Let them suffer for 20 years while you built your perfect life on their pain? I had no choice, Catherine shouted. Dad protected me, helped me cover it up. He understood what was at stake. Our family's reputation, my future. Everything I've done since then was to protect what we built. No, Mrs. Myers stepped forward. You did it to protect yourself, just like you're doing now with your sister's inheritance. Catherine's hand moved to her phone. One call and my security team is already being questioned by the police, Emma cut in. Along with your lawyers, the DA is very interested in both the old case and the new financial evidence. All color drained from Catherine's face. The first time in my life, I saw my sister's carefully constructed world crumbling around her. She looked small suddenly, vulnerable, like the teenager she must have been that night on the bridge. Rebecca, she whispered. Please, you're my sister. Yes, I am, I replied, which is why I'm not letting you run from this anymore. It's time to face the truth, Catherine. All of it. The sound of police sirens in the distance grew louder. Catherine sank into a chair, her shoulders slumping in defeat. As red and blue lights began to flash through the windows, I thought about all the moments that had led us here. Every lie, every manipulation, every choice that had turned my sister from someone I admired into someone I barely recognized. The truth was finally emerging, but at what cost to our family? The next few hours passed in a blur of police statements, camera flashes, and formal declarations. I watched from Dad's study window as Catherine was escorted to a police car, her designer heels clicking one last time across the driveway where we'd played as children. She didn't look back. Detective Sarah Chen, the lead investigator, sat across from me in Dad's study, her dark eyes sharp and attentive as she reviewed my statement. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the room, highlighting the empty spaces where family photos had already been taken as evidence. You understand, Chen said, closing her notebook, that this goes beyond just your sister. The financial fraud at Mitchell Industries affects hundreds of employees, shareholders, clients. The DA is calling it one of the largest corporate fraud cases in state history. I nodded, my throat tight. What about Jennifer's case? 20 years is a long time, Chen admitted. But with Mrs. Myers' evidence and your sister's partial confession, we have enough to proceed. The recovery team is already at the bridge, searching the area with modern equipment. Emma had left hours ago to file her story, promising to send me an advance copy before it went to print. Mrs. Myers had gone with her, years of grief and anger finally finding purpose in pursuit of justice. As the police finally cleared out, Claire arrived, armed with takeout containers and a bottle of wine. We sat in the kitchen, the same space where just days ago I'd been the unsuspecting sister about to discover a devastating truth. The board of Mitchell Industries called, I said, picking at my untouched food. They're holding an emergency meeting tomorrow. As Dad's other heir, they want me there. Claire reached across the table, squeezing my hand. What are you going to do? I pulled out a folder, documents I'd prepared during my night at the cabin but hadn't shown anyone yet. I have a plan, but I need your honest opinion. Inside were proposals for restructuring Mitchell Industries, establishing a victims' compensation fund for those affected by Catherine's fraud, creating a scholarship program in Jennifer's name, transforming the company's focus toward ethical business, practices and community investment, Dad built this company to help people, I explained, before Catherine got her hands on it, before greed corrupted everything. I want to restore that legacy. Claire reviewed the documents, her artist's eye catching details I'd missed. This isn't just damage control, she observed. This is a complete transformation. The board might resist. Let them, I said, surprising myself with my firmness. I'm done letting fear of confrontation enable more wrongdoing. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Story goes live at midnight. You should read it first. I opened the attached file. Claire reading over my shoulder. 20-year mystery solved. Local businesswoman arrested in cold case and corporate fraud investigation. The article was thorough, damning, but fair. Emma had woven together the past and present, showing how one act of violence had spawned decades of deception. She'd included statements from former employees who'd suspected fraud, experts analyzing the financial evidence, and a moving interview with Mrs. Myers. There's something else, Claire said softly. The police found this when they were collecting evidence. She handed me an envelope, yellowed with age. Inside was a letter in Dad's handwriting, dated just days before his death. My dearest Rebecca, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and the truth I've carried for 20 years weighs heavier than ever. I protected Catherine that night, convinced myself it was for the best, that she would learn and change. Instead, I watched her become someone I no longer recognized, someone who valued money and power over family and truth. I tried to fix it, at the end, to change the will back, to come forward about Jennifer, but Catherine had too much control, and the medication made everything so foggy. I failed Jennifer's family. I failed our family. Most of all, I failed you. The company was never meant to be a weapon. It was meant to build things, help people, make the world a little better. I see that spirit in you, Rebecca, the strength to do what's right, no matter the cost. The truth about that night is in the safe behind your mother's portrait. Evidence I could never bring myself to destroy. Use it wisely, and please find a way to forgive me. All my love, Dad. Tears blurred my vision as Claire held me. The weight of Dad's final confession settling around us. Outside, news vans were already gathering at the gate, their satellite dishes raised like strange flowers in the fading light. Tomorrow I would face the board, the press, the task of rebuilding, everything Catherine had nearly destroyed. But tonight, in this kitchen where our family had once shared happier meals, I made a decision that would define the next chapter of our story. I need to see her, I said finally, before the story breaks, before everything changes forever. Claire looked concerned. Are you sure? After everything she did? I thought about the sister who had taught me to ride a bike, who had held my hand at Mom's funeral, who had somewhere along the way lost herself so completely to greed and fear that she'd destroyed everything she touched. She's still my sister, I said softly. And before we face tomorrow, she needs to know she's not alone in facing the consequences of her choices. The county detention center loomed before me, a stark concrete building bathed in harsh fluorescent light. The evening air was thick with humidity as I followed a stone-faced guard through a series of security checkpoints. My heels echoed against the polished floors. I'd dressed formally, as if for a business meeting, though I wasn't sure why. Perhaps some part of me still wanted to show Catherine that I could match her polished exterior. 10 minutes, the SOC guard said, leading me to a small room divided by bulletproof glass. No physical contact, no passing of items. Everything is recorded. I sat at the metal table, studying my reflection in the glass. Behind me, Emma's article was probably going live, spreading across social media, destroying what remained of the Mitchell family's carefully constructed facade. In my briefcase were the documents I'd prepared for tomorrow's board meeting, my vision for the company's future, for redemption. The door on the other side buzzed open. Catherine entered, wearing a blue jumpsuit that made her look impossibly small. Her makeup had been removed, her carefully styled hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Without her armor of designer clothes and practiced poise, she looked startlingly like the sister I remembered from childhood. We both reached for the phones on either side of the glass at the same time. "I didn't expect to see you here," Catherine said, her voice scratchy. "Come to gloat?" "No," I replied softly. "I came because I found Dad's letter, the one he wrote at the end." Catherine's hand tightened on the phone. He was confused, heavily medicated. Whatever he wrote. He was trying to protect you even then, I interrupted. Just like he protected you 20 years ago. But protection without accountability isn't love, Catherine. It's enablement. Tears welled in her eyes, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her in years. You don't understand what it was like, carrying that secret. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jennifer's face. The fundraiser money was supposed to fix everything, but then she found out, threatened to expose me. I just wanted her to listen, to understand. So you pushed her. I didn't mean to. Catherine's voice cracked. She lost her balance. I reached for her, but she was already falling. I called for help, but no one came. By the time Dad found me, it was too late. I pressed my hand against the glass. Why didn't you come to me? I would have helped you. You were 16, Catherine whispered. Perfect, innocent Rebecca. Mom's death had already broken you. I couldn't add this burden. So instead you buried it. Let it poison you, turn you into someone who could steal from her own family, manipulate. A dying man threaten her sister? Catherine wiped her eyes with her sleeve. The company was all I had left. My reputation, my success. It was the only thing that made the guilt bearable. When Dad got sick, when I saw the chance to take control completely, I told myself I deserved it, after everything I'd sacrificed to protect our family name. I pulled out the company documents, holding them up to the glass. The board meets tomorrow. I'm proposing a complete restructuring. A victims' compensation fund, a scholarship in Jennifer's name, new ethical oversight committees. They'll never accept it, Catherine said. The shareholders will have to choose between my plan and a complete collapse when your fraud becomes public, I finished. The article goes live at midnight. By morning, everyone will know everything. Catherine's facade crumbled completely. She pressed her forehead against the glass, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I'm sorry, she whispered. God, Rebecca, I'm so sorry. For Jennifer, for Dad, for what I did to you. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, I said firmly. Because that's not why I'm here. I'm here because you're my sister, and you're about to face the hardest time of your life. The truth is finally coming out, Catherine, all of it. And I want you to know that while I can't protect you from the consequences, I won't abandon you to face them alone. The guard appeared, signaling our time was almost up. The company, Catherine said quickly. Dad's legacy. Please don't let my mistakes destroy everything he built. I stood, gathering my things. Dad's legacy wasn't the company, Catherine. It was the belief that it's never too late to choose truth over lies, redemption over pride. Tomorrow, I start rebuilding what your choices destroyed, but I'm doing it my way, with honesty, accountability, and hope. As I turned to leave, Catherine called out, Rebecca, tell Mrs. Myers. Tell her I'll give them everything they need to find Jennifer. It's time to bring her home. Walking out of the detention center, I felt lighter somehow. The truth hadn't changed the past, hadn't erased the pain or guaranteed forgiveness. But it had opened a path forward, one step at a time. My phone buzzed. Emma's article had just gone live. Above it was a message from Claire. Ready for tomorrow? I looked back at the building where Catherine would spend the night facing her demons, then at the city skyline where the Mitchell Industries tower stood waiting for dawn and change. Yes, I typed back. For the first time in 20 years, I think we all are. The Mitchell Industries boardroom buzzed with tension as dawn broke over the city skyline. 18 board members sat around the massive oak table, their faces illuminated by the glow of tablets displaying Emma's article. The story had exploded overnight, making national headlines and sending the company's stock into a nosedive. I stood at the head of the table, my father's old position, dressed in a simple black suit that felt like armor. The wall of windows behind me offered a panoramic view of the city waking up, news vans already gathering at the building's entrance like vultures. "Ms. Mitchell," Gerald Porter, the lead director, cleared his throat. "While we appreciate you calling this emergency meeting, surely you understand that given the circumstances, I interrupted, my voice steady. Every person in this room needs to decide whether they were complicit in my sister's fraud or merely negligent in their oversight duties. Either way, the SEC will be asking questions." That silenced them. I opened my presentation, the screens around the room lighting up with my proposed restructuring plan. Mitchell Industries was founded on principles of innovation and community service, I began. My father built this company to create jobs, support families, and contribute to society. Somewhere along the way, those values were corrupted. Today, we begin restoring them. Over the next hour, I laid out my vision. The Victims' Compensation Fund, drawing from the recovered offshore accounts and a portion of future profits. The Jennifer Myers Memorial Scholarship for Underprivileged Students. New ethical oversight committees with real power. Complete transparency in all financial dealings. "This is insanity," Porter exploded. "The shareholders will revolt. The stock price is already falling," I finished, "and will continue to fall as more details of Catherine's fraud emerge. We can either get ahead of this, show real commitment to change, or watch this company collapse under the weight of investigations and lawsuits." "And who exactly would lead this transformation?" Another board member asked skeptically. "You're a high school teacher." I smiled, pressing a button. On my remote, the screens filled with names and faces, experts in corporate ethics, financial oversight specialists, community leaders. "Meet your new executive team, people chosen for their integrity and expertise, not their connections. And yes, I will be stepping in as CEO." "This is highly irregular," Porter sputtered. "The bylaws allow for emergency succession in cases of criminal misconduct," I finished. "My father's shares, combined with those recovered from Catherine's illegal transfers, give me controlling interest. I'm not asking for permission, gentlemen. I'm telling you how we're going to save this company." The boardroom erupted in heated discussions. Through the chaos, I noticed Sandra Chen, the youngest board member, studying my proposal intently. "The scholarship program," she said, cutting through the noise. "It's not just about Jennifer Myers, is it? It's about preventing future tragedies born from desperation and greed." I nodded. Everything Catherine did, every crime she committed, started with one moment of panic over money. We have an opportunity here to break that cycle for others. "I second the proposal," Sandra announced firmly, "and I volunteer to chair the ethics committee." One by one, other board members began to fall in line, seeing the inevitability of change. By noon, the votes were in. My plan had passed, though narrowly. Porter and his closest allies resigned in protest, but I had expected that. Sometimes, healing required cutting away the rot. As the boardroom emptied, my phone buzzed with a message from Detective Chen. "Recovery team found. Something at the bridge. You should come." I gathered my things, pausing to look at Dad's portrait on the boardroom wall. He seemed to be smiling slightly, as if he knew this day would come. The drive to Miller's Bridge took me through streets lined with reporters and camera crews. News of Catherine's arrest and the company's upheaval had brought the national media to our small town. But they weren't gathered at the bridge. That scene was grimmer, marked by police tape and search equipment. Detective Chen met me at the perimeter. The rain last week shifted some of the riverbed, she explained, leading me to where a team of forensic experts worked. We found her, Rebecca. After all these years, we found Jennifer. I stared at the recovery site, thinking of the teenager, who had tried to do the right thing and paid with her life. Does Mrs. Myers know? She's on her way. The DA wants to talk to you both about the next steps in the case. My phone buzzed again. Claire, reminding me about the press conference scheduled for that afternoon. In a few hours, I would have to face the cameras, explain our company's transformation, answer questions about family betrayal and corporate fraud. But for now, I stood at the bridge where everything had begun and ended, watching as 2 decades of secrets finally came to light. The truth hadn't brought peace, not yet, but it had brought possibility, a chance to build something better. From the ashes of deception. We'll need to postpone the press conference, I told Claire, texting with one hand. There's somewhere else I need to be first. News of Jennifer's recovery hit the media like a thunderbolt. I watched from Mrs. Myers' side as she stood at the excavation site, her small frame shaking with decades of pent-up grief finally finding release. The coroner's team worked with painstaking care, documenting everything, preserving evidence that had waited 20 years to be found. She was wearing the silver bracelet I gave her for her 16th birthday, Mrs. Myers said softly, clutching a tissue. All this time she was so close to home. I thought about Catherine in her cell, waiting to hear that her secret had literally been unearthed. Detective Chen approached with a tablet, her face grim. We found this in Jennifer's pocket. The water damage is extensive, but our tech team managed to recover some of it. It was a notebook, its pages warped and stained, but some entries were still legible. Jennifer's handwriting, preserving her final testimony, detailed records of the missing fundraiser money, dates, amounts, accounts. She had documented everything, determined to expose the truth even as it put her in danger. Like mother, like daughter, Mrs. Myers said, a hint of pride breaking through her grief. We both kept records. We both waited for justice. The press conference had been rescheduled for the following morning. As I drove back to the Mitchell Industries building, I passed the local high school where everything had begun. The old gymnasium, the one that never got built because of Catherine's theft, still stood, a reminder of how one act of dishonesty had spawned decades of consequences. In my office, Dad's old office, Claire waited with the PR team. Chapter 1. Room had been transformed. Catherine's expensive artwork replaced with photographs of company milestones and community projects. On my desk sat a framed picture of Jennifer Myers, her bright smile a reminder of why change was necessary. The shareholders are panicking, Claire reported, showing me the latest stock reports. But the public response to your reform proposals has been overwhelming. People want to believe in redemption stories. I reviewed the speech we'd prepared, making adjustments. This wasn't just about corporate restructuring anymore. It was about acknowledging the past while building a different future. We need to add something, I said, picking up a pen. A new initiative, the Jennifer Myers Whistleblower Protection Program, full legal support and protection for any employee who reports ethical violations. The PR team exchanged glances, but Claire smiled, making sure no one else has to choose between truth and safety. As evening approached, I received an unexpected call from the detention center. Catherine had seen the news about Jennifer's recovery and wanted to talk. Part of me wanted to refuse, to let her sit with the consequences of her actions, but I remembered my promise not to abandon her. The holding cell was different this time. No glass partition, just a metal table and 2 chairs. Catherine looked even smaller than before, her shoulders hunched under the weight of exposure. They found her notebook, she said as I sat down. Jennifer's final evidence against me. Fitting, isn't it? She gets the last word after all. The DA is reviewing the case, I replied. With your confession and the new evidence, they're talking about a plea deal. Substantial prison time, but not life. Catherine nodded slowly. I saw your company announcement. The whistleblower program. It's a good idea. Better late than never, I suppose. She paused, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. The board meeting went well? We're moving forward. Several members resigned, but the younger ones are embracing change. We're already getting applications for the scholarship program. Dad would be proud, Catherine whispered. Of you, I mean. Not of what I did to his legacy. I reached across the table, taking my sister's hand for the first time since her arrest. His legacy isn't just the company, Catherine. It's us. What we choose to do now, how we face the truth. I keep thinking about that night, she said, her voice breaking. How different everything would be if I'd just asked for help instead of trying to fix it myself. If I'd trusted you, trusted Dad with the real truth instead of pulling him into my lies. We can't change the past, I replied, squeezing her hand. But we can honor Jennifer's memory by making sure nothing like this happens again. The truth, she died protecting, it's finally going to make a difference. Catherine withdrew her hand, wiping her eyes. The recovery team. Did they find anything else? Besides the notebook? I studied my sister's face, seeing real remorse beneath the fear. They found her bracelet. Mrs. Myers recognized it. She's planning a proper burial, finally giving Jennifer the farewell she deserved. The guard signaled that our time was up. As I stood to leave, Catherine called out, Rebecca, thank you, not for forgiving me, I know that's impossible, but for not letting me hide anymore, from what I did, from who I became. Walking. Out of the detention center, I felt the weight of the past 24 hours settling on my shoulders. Tomorrow, I would face the press, announce our company's transformation, begin the long process of rebuilding trust. But tonight, somewhere beneath Miller's Bridge, Jennifer's truth had finally come to light, setting us all free in different ways. The morning of the press conference dawned bright and clear. I stood in my father's study one last time, preparing to face the media circus that had descended on our small town. The Mitchell Industries legal team had arrived early, led by Margaret Thorne, a corporate ethics specialist I'd hired to help navigate the transformation ahead. The SEC investigators will be here this afternoon, Margaret said, reviewing her notes. They're particularly interested in the offshore accounts Catherine used. The paper trail goes back further than we initially thought, all the way to the original fundraiser theft. I nodded, adjusting my blazer in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked different somehow. Stronger, more determined than the teacher who had discovered her sister's betrayal just days ago. What about the Victims' Compensation Fund? We've identified most of the affected parties, Margaret replied. The forensic accountants are still calculating the total damages, but with the recovered assets and Catherine's cooperation, we should be able to make everyone whole. A knock at the door interrupted us. Emma, notepad in hand. Got a minute? There's something you need to see before the press conference. She handed me a manila envelope containing photos from the bridge recovery site. Among them was a clear image of Jennifer's notebook, restored by forensic experts. The final entry made my heart stop. Kay admitted everything today. The missing money, the gambling debts, all of it. Says she'll pay it back if I keep quiet. But how many others has she stolen from? How many more will there be? I have to tell someone. Meeting her at the bridge tonight. This ends now. The DA wants to use this in the case against Catherine, Emma explained softly. Mrs. Myers has agreed to testify as well. I placed the photos back in the envelope, my hands trembling slightly. Has Catherine seen these? Not yet. Every lie, every cover-up, every manipulation. I want that on record. For the next 3 hours, Catherine methodically dismantled 20 years of deception. She detailed the original theft from the fundraiser, her gambling debts, the fatal confrontation with Jennifer. Then she moved on to the years of financial fraud at Mitchell Industries, naming accomplices, revealing accounts, exposing the entire web of corruption she'd woven. The offshore accounts were Dad's idea, she admitted, her voice hollow. Not for fraud. Originally, they were legitimate tax shelters. But I saw the potential. Started small at first, skimming profits, manipulating records. By the time Dad got sick, I had a whole shadow accounting system in place. The DA's team scribbled furiously, occasionally interrupting with clarifying questions. I noticed Detective Chen paying particular attention to the names Catherine mentioned, board members, executives, accountants who had helped conceal the fraud. And the will? I asked quietly. How did you manage that? Catherine wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad's medication made him confused. I had suggested changes to his legal team, brought in people who wouldn't question things. The final version he signed, he thought he was approving routine company documents. Victoria Reed cleared her throat. My client understands that this confession, combined with her cooperation in recovering the stolen assets, will be considered in sentencing? The DA nodded grimly. The murder charge stays, but we're willing to discuss reducing it to second degree. The financial crimes? That depends on how much we can recover. As the legal teams haggled over details, I studied my sister's face. The polished mask she'd worn for so long had crumbled completely, revealing something I hadn't seen in years. Truth. My phone buzzed again. Claire, with updates from Mitchell Industries. The board was implementing our new oversight protocols, and the first applications for the Jennifer Myers Scholarship had started arriving. Among them was a letter from a current student at our old high school, describing how Jennifer's story had inspired her to speak up about irregularities in student government funds. There's something else, Catherine said suddenly, interrupting the legal discussions. Something I never told anyone, not even Dad. She pulled a folded paper from her jumpsuit pocket. The night Jennifer died, she left this in my car. I've carried it with me ever since. The paper was worn soft with age, Jennifer's handwriting. Barely legible. Catherine, I know you're scared. I understand fear. It makes us do terrible things, but it's not too late to make this right. Meet me at the bridge tonight. We can fix this together. Find a way to pay back the money without destroying your future. You don't have to carry this alone. My vision blurred as I read Jennifer's final attempt to help the person who would take her life. Even at the end, she had offered understanding, a chance for redemption. She was better than me, Catherine whispered. Better than all of us. That's why I couldn't let her live. She reminded me of who I could have been, should have been. Detective Chen collected the note as evidence, but not before I saw Mrs. Myers' phone number hastily scrawled on the back. Jennifer's last act had been trying to call her mother for help. Outside, the autumn sun was setting, painting the detention center walls in shades of gold and shadow. My phone had dozens of missed calls, reporters, shareholders, employees all wanting statements about the company's future. But one message stood out, a text from Mrs. Myers. Just saw the press conference. Jennifer would be proud of what you're doing with the company. When you have time, I'd like to help with the foundation. Her story deserves to be more than just a tragedy. The days following Catherine's confession blurred together in a whirlwind of meetings, interviews, and legal proceedings. Mitchell. Industries headquarters had become ground zero for a corporate revolution that was making headlines across the country. The SEC investigators had set up camp in our conference rooms, while a stream of former employees came forward with their own stories of witnessing Catherine's fraud. I sat in my new office, reviewing the latest findings with Margaret Thorne. The scope of Catherine's deception was still unfolding. Shell companies nested within shell companies, a labyrinth of financial misdirection that would take months to fully unravel. The forensic accountants found something interesting, Margaret said. sliding a report across my desk. The pattern of fraud changed after your father's diagnosis, became more aggressive, less careful, almost desperate. Before I could respond, Claire burst in, her face flushed with excitement. "You need to see this. Mrs. Myers just gave an interview to Emma." The video played on my office screen. Mrs. Myers standing at Miller's Bridge, surrounded by flowers and cards left by community members. Her voice was steady as she addressed the camera. "For 20 years I lived with uncertainty. Now thanks to Rebecca Mitchell's courage, my daughter can finally rest in peace. But Jennifer's story isn't over, it's just beginning. The foundation bearing her name will ensure that other whistleblowers don't face the same fate she did." The interview cut to footage of the new Mitchell Industries initiatives, the scholarship program, the ethics training center, the whistleblower protection protocols. My own voice narrated the changes. "We're not just rebuilding a company, we're redefining corporate responsibility." A knock at my office door interrupted the playback. Detective Chen entered, holding a thick file. "We've finished processing the evidence from the bridge site. There's something you and Mrs. Myers should see." An hour later, we gathered in the police station's conference room. Mrs. Myers sat beside me, clutching her daughter's restored notebook. Detective Chen spread photographs across the table, underwater camera shots showing where Jennifer had been found. "She didn't die from the fall," Chen explained gently. "The autopsy shows she survived the initial impact. She was trying to climb out when Catherine pushed her back in," Mrs. Myers finished, her voice tight. "My daughter fought until the end. I reached for her hand, feeling her strength as she squeezed back." "The DA wants to revise the charges," Chen continued. "This evidence suggests premeditation. They're considering first-degree murder." My phone buzzed. A message from the detention center. Catherine had learned about the new evidence and wanted to speak with me immediately. Mrs. Myers looked at me, understanding, in her eyes. "Go," she said softly. "I need to know why. We all do." The drive to the detention center felt different this time. The guards led me to a new section. Catherine had been moved to maximum security pending the revised charges. She sat hunched. At the metal table, the orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her frame. "They found proof," she said as I sat down, "about what really happened that night." "You lied in your confession," I replied, keeping my voice level. "It wasn't an accident. You went back to make sure she couldn't get out." Catherine's facade cracked completely. "I was so angry," she whispered. "She acted so righteous, so sure. She was doing the right thing. When she survived the fall, when I saw her trying to climb up, something in me snapped. The idea that she might still win, might still expose everything." "She was trying to help you," I said, pulling out a copy of Jennifer's final note. "Until the very end, she believed you could change." Tears streaked Catherine's face. "I know. That's what made it worse." Her compassion, her integrity, everything I'd lost to greed and fear. Watching her die, knowing she was better than me, it broke something inside me. After that, the lies came easily, each one bigger than the last, until I couldn't remember who I really was anymore. I studied my sister, seeing her clearly for the first time. "The DA is revising the charges, with this new evidence." "I know," she interrupted. "Life without parole, probably. Maybe I deserve worse." She paused, wiping her eyes. "The company, the changes you're making, it's what Dad always wanted, what Jennifer died trying to protect." "It's not just about the company anymore," I said. "Mrs. Myers is helping design the Foundation's programs. Jennifer's story is becoming a catalyst for real change." Catherine nodded slowly. "When I saw her interview, she has more grace than I ever did, more than I deserve." She pushed a sealed envelope across the table. Will you give her this? It's everything I remember about that night. Every detail I left out of my confession. She deserves the whole truth. As I left the detention center, the sun was setting behind Mitchell Industries Tower. The company logo had been updated, incorporating a small bridge symbol, a reminder of where truth and lies had collided, changing all our lives forever. The weight of Catherine's final confession felt heavy in my bag as I drove to Mrs. Meyer's house. The modest suburban home was exactly as Jennifer had left it 2 decades ago. Her mother had preserved her daughter's room like a time capsule, waiting for answers that had taken 20 years to surface. Mrs. Myers opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been watching for my arrival. The kitchen table was set with 2 cups of tea, family photos spread across its surface. I recognized Jennifer in many of them, school plays, sports teams, always with that determined smile. "How much worse is it?" she asked as I sat down. "The real story?" I placed Catherine's envelope between us. She wrote down everything, details she left out of the official confession. I haven't read it. I thought you should be the first. With trembling fingers, Mrs. Myers opened the envelope. As she read, her face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions: grief, anger, understanding, and finally, a deep, settling calm. She carefully folded the pages and tucked them into her pocket. "She watched," Mrs. Myers said quietly. After pushing Jennifer back in, she stood there and watched. My daughter fought for 8 minutes before. Her voice broke, but she steadied herself. 8 minutes where Catherine could have helped, could have called for help. Instead, she watched. The tea grew cold between us as Mrs. Myers shared memories of Jennifer, her passion for justice, her dreams of becoming a lawyer, her habit of standing up for underdogs. "The scholarship program," she said suddenly. "I want to help select the recipients, find students who share Jennifer's spirit." "Of course," I agreed. "We're already getting applications. Young people inspired by her story, determined to make a difference." My phone buzzed. Emma with updates about the case. The DA was proceeding with first-degree murder charges. Catherine's detailed confession would be entered into evidence, along with the forensic findings from the bridge. "The preliminary hearing is next week," I told Mrs. Myers. "They'll want you to testify." She nodded, touching the letter in her pocket. "I'll read this. Every word. The court needs to understand who Jennifer was, what the world lost that night." Later that evening, I returned to Mitchell Industries. The building was quiet, most employees gone home, but light spilled from the conference room where the ethics committee was still working. Sandra Chen, the young board member who'd supported my reforms, waved me in. "We're finalizing the whistleblower protection protocols," she explained, gesturing to the documents spread across the table. "Every employee will have direct access to external oversight, anonymous reporting options, legal support. No one will ever have to face what Jennifer did." I picked up one of the draft policies, noting how they'd incorporated elements of Jennifer's story: clear reporting channels, protection from retaliation, support systems for those coming forward with evidence of wrongdoing. "There's something else," Sandra said, pulling up a presentation on her laptop. "We've been analyzing the company's legitimate projects from the past 20 years. Despite Catherine's fraud, some of our developments actually helped communities. Affordable housing initiatives, environmental restoration projects. We thought maybe the foundation could build on that legacy, turn Mitchell Industries into a force for positive change." The idea resonated with something Dad had told me long ago. A company is like a river. It can either nourish or destroy, depending on how it's directed. My phone buzzed again. Claire, with news from the high school. The student government had voted to rename their ethics council after Jennifer. The same institution where corruption had once flourished was now embracing transparency and accountability. As I drove home that night, I took the long route past Miller's Bridge. The makeshift memorial had grown. Flowers, candles, notes from community members sharing their own stories of choosing between truth and silence. Someone had painted a small mural on one of the support pillars, a bridge transforming into a flock of birds taking flight. At home, I found an unexpected package. Waiting. Inside was Dad's old ledger, sent by the forensic accountants who'd finished analyzing it. Post-it notes marked entries where he'd tried to track Catherine's fraud, his handwriting growing shakier as his illness progressed. But it was the final page that caught my attention, a letter he'd started writing to Jennifer's parents. "Your daughter's courage haunts me. I thought I was protecting my family by helping cover up the truth, but I only enabled more darkness. Catherine's crimes grew because I chose silence over justice. I hope someday." The letter ended there, unfinished like so many things in this story. But as I looked at the documents spread across my desk, the whistleblower protocols, the foundation plans, the scholarship applications, I realized that maybe the ending wasn't what mattered most. Perhaps it was the new beginnings that could emerge from even the darkest truths. The morning of Catherine's preliminary hearing dawned cold and clear. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters and camera crews, all eager to document the next chapter in a story that had captivated the nation. Inside, the tension was palpable as Mrs. Myers and I sat in the front row, watching my sister, being led and wearing handcuffs. Detective Chen had worked through the night with the prosecution team, building a case that would finally bring justice not just for Jennifer, but for everyone affected by Catherine's decades of deception. The evidence was overwhelming: forensic reports, financial records, and now Catherine's own detailed confession. "All rise," the bailiff called as Judge Eleanor Martinez entered the courtroom. She was known for her fair but firm handling of high-profile cases, and her expression revealed nothing as she reviewed the charges. Catherine stood as the indictment was read: first-degree murder, financial fraud, obstruction of justice, and a host of other charges that painted a picture of 20 years of calculated deception. When asked how she pleaded, her voice was barely audible. "Guilty to all charges." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The DA had expected a fight, negotiating pleas, dragging the case out. But Catherine's immediate admission seemed to deflate the tension, replacing it with something heavier, the weight of truth finally acknowledged. During the recess, I found myself in the courthouse garden, seeking a moment of quiet. Emma found me there, her reporter's notebook tucked away for once. "Mitchell Industries' stock is up," she said, sitting beside me. "The markets are responding positively to your transparency initiatives. Turns out, ethical business practices can be good for the bottom line." Before I could respond, Claire rushed out, her face flushed with excitement. "You need to see this. The scholarship committee just finished their first round of reviews." She handed me her tablet, showing profiles of the initial candidates. Young people from across the country, each inspired by Jennifer's story to pursue careers in corporate ethics, law, and social justice. One application particularly caught my eye: a student from our old high school who had uncovered financial irregularities in her part-time job and reported them, despite pressure to stay quiet. "Jennifer would have loved this," Mrs. Myers said, joining us. She'd been reading impact statements from former Mitchell Industries employees affected by Catherine's fraud, creating something positive from all this pain. Back in the courtroom, Judge Martinez announced that sentencing would be delayed, pending a full review of Catherine's cooperation with ongoing investigations. But her words to my sister were clear: "Your admission of guilt is just the beginning." True justice requires more than words. It requires action to repair the damage done. That evening, I returned to Mitchell Industries for an emergency board meeting. The company's transformation was gaining momentum, but challenges remained. Sandra Chen presented the latest findings from our internal audit. "We've identified all the compromised accounts," she reported. "The recovery team has already secured 60% of the misappropriated funds. But more importantly, we're seeing a culture shift. Employees are using the new reporting systems, raising concerns they'd previously kept quiet. The conference room windows offered a view of the city skyline, lights twinkling on like stars. In the reflection, I could see the ghost of what this company had been, a facade of success built on lies, overlaid with what it was becoming. A model for corporate reform and ethical leadership. My phone buzzed with a message from Detective Chen. Search team found something else at the bridge. Not evidence, something personal. Mrs. Myers should see this. An hour later, we gathered at the recovery site. The team had discovered a small time capsule hidden in one of the bridge's support structures. Inside was a letter Jennifer had written the day before her death, addressed to whoever finds the truth. "I don't know what will happen tonight," she'd written, "but I know that secrets this big don't stay buried forever. If you're reading this, it means someone finally chose truth over silence. That's all I ever wanted, to show that one person's courage can make a difference." Mrs. Myers clutched the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "She knew," she whispered. "She knew the risks, but chose to stand up anyway." As we stood there in the gathering dusk, I thought about courage. Not the dramatic kind that makes headlines, but the quiet determination that makes someone face uncomfortable truths, stand up against wrongs, choose integrity over expedience. The Jennifer Myers Foundation was becoming more than just a memorial. It was a beacon for others facing similar choices, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, choosing truth could light a path forward. 6 months after Catherine's confession, Mitchell Industries hosted its first Ethics in Business Summit. The company's main auditorium was filled with corporate leaders, whistleblowers, and students eager to learn from our transformation. The story of Jennifer Myers and the bridge had become a case study in corporate ethics courses across the country. I stood at the podium, looking out at the diverse crowd. Mrs. Myers sat in the front row, surrounded by the first class of Jennifer Myers Scholarship recipients, 15 young people chosen not just for their academic achievements, but for their demonstrated commitment to ethical leadership. "Legacy isn't just about what we inherit," I began, my voice steady. "It's about what we choose to build from that inheritance." 6 months ago, our company faced a choice between preserving a comfortable lie and embracing an uncomfortable truth. The presentation screens behind me showed the company's journey, from Catherine's fraud through our complete restructuring. The numbers told their own story. Employee satisfaction up 40%, whistleblower reports addressed within 48 hours, and most surprisingly, a 25% increase in stock value since implementing our transparency initiatives. Sandra Chen took the stage next, introducing our new corporate governance model. "Ethics isn't just a department or a policy manual," she explained. "It's the foundation of every decision, every project, every interaction." During the lunch break, Emma pulled me aside. Her investigative series on corporate fraud, inspired by our case, had just won a National Journalism Award. "You should see the impact your story is having," she said, showing me her latest article. Companies across the country were adopting similar reforms, citing Mitchell Industries as a model. But it was the afternoon session that truly demonstrated the change we'd sparked. Former employees who had witnessed Catherine's fraud shared their stories publicly for the first time. One by one, they described the pressure to stay silent, the fear of retaliation, the guilt of complicity. "I saw the irregularities," one accountant admitted, his voice shaking. "But I had a family to support, a mortgage to pay." Catherine made it clear what happened to people who asked questions. He paused, looking at Jennifer's photo on the wall. "I'll carry that shame forever. But now I teach my children that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing right, even when you're afraid." Claire, who had become the foundation's creative director, unveiled the Jennifer Myers Memorial, a sculpture for the company lobby. It showed a bridge transforming into a flock of birds, each carrying a light. "Every truth told lights the way for others," she explained. Every act of courage makes the next one easier. As the summit concluded, Detective Chen arrived with unexpected news. The forensic team had made a breakthrough in tracking Catherine's earliest financial crimes. The trail led to other companies, other cover-ups. Your sister's confession opened a door, Chen explained. People are coming forward with similar stories across multiple industries. That evening, I visited Catherine in prison. The maximum security facility was a far cry from the detention center where we'd first confronted the truth. She'd lost weight, but her eyes were clearer, more present than I'd seen them in years. I saw the summit coverage, she said as I sat down. The scholarship recipients, they remind me of Jennifer. That same determination to do right, no matter the cost. The foundation is reviewing your case files, I told her, using them to teach others how to recognize warning signs, prevent similar frauds. Your mistakes are becoming lessons. Catherine nodded slowly. I've been working with the investigators, helping them understand how I hid everything for so long. It's strange. Telling the truth feels easier now, like a muscle getting stronger with use. Outside her cell, life was moving forward. Mitchell Industries had announced a new partnership with law enforcement to create a corporate crime prevention task force. Mrs. Myers was writing a book about Jennifer's story, weaving together themes of courage, justice, and redemption. The high school had established an ethics bowl team named in Jennifer's honor. As I drove home that night, I passed Miller's Bridge. The memorial had been made permanent, a small garden with a plaque telling Jennifer's story. But it wasn't just about remembering anymore. It was about learning, changing, growing. The truth Jennifer died protecting had finally taken root, sprouting new possibilities for justice and reform. My phone buzzed with a message from one of the scholarship recipients. Just finished my first corporate internship. Use the whistleblower protocols you designed to report unsafe practices. Management actually listened. Change is possible. A year had passed since the discovery of Jennifer's letter in Dad's study. Mitchell Industries was hosting a memorial service to mark both the anniversary of her death and the dedication of the new Jennifer Myers Center for Corporate Ethics, a state-of-the-art facility built where the old high school gymnasium should have been. The autumn air was crisp as people gathered in the center's courtyard. Mrs. Myers stood beside me, her silver hair catching the morning light. She'd become more than just an ally in our mission for change. She was family now, in a way that transcended blood ties. Jennifer would hardly recognize this place, she said, watching as students and business leaders mingled before the ceremony. Not just the building, but what it represents. Every person here carries a piece of her story. The center's design incorporated elements from the bridge, steel and stone transformed into something new and purposeful. The main hall featured a wall of screens displaying real-time data from our transparency initiatives, while classrooms were equipped for remote testimony from whistleblowers worldwide. Sandra Chen joined us, carrying the latest quarterly report. The numbers are extraordinary, she said. Our ethical business model has attracted investors who previously wouldn't touch Mitchell Industries. We're proving that integrity and profitability aren't mutually exclusive. The ceremony began with a video montage Emma had produced, weaving together Jennifer's story with the company's transformation. Catherine appeared briefly in old footage, her younger self standing with Jennifer at a school event. The contrast with recent prison interviews was stark, the polished facade replaced by genuine remorse. My sister's actions revealed a cancer. In corporate culture, I said in my opening speech. But Jennifer's courage showed us the cure. Every person who speaks up, every company that chooses transparency, every student who learns these lessons, they're carrying forward her legacy. Mrs. Myers took the podium next, her voice strong despite her emotion. A year ago, I thought justice meant punishment. Now I understand it's about transformation. The Jennifer Myers Center isn't just a building, it's a beacon for others. facing the choice between truth and silence. During the reception, Detective Chen pulled me aside. "We've closed 3 major fraud cases using protocols developed here," she reported. "Other departments are adopting our methods. The ripple effect keeps growing." Claire had outdone herself with the center's artwork. Photographs lined the corridors. Jennifer's high school yearbook picture, the bridge then and now, Catherine's arrest, the first scholarship recipients. Together, they told a story of loss and redemption, of how truth, once spoken, couldn't be silenced. "There's something else," Claire said, leading me to a private office. "Catherine sent this for the dedication. She's been working with a prison art therapist." The painting showed the bridge at dawn, darkness giving way to light. But it was the details that caught my eye. Small figures standing together, facing the sunrise. Jennifer and Catherine as they might have been if different choices had been made. My phone buzzed with a message from the prison, Catherine requesting a visit. I found her in the library where she'd been helping investigate other corporate fraud cases. She looked different, peaceful almost, despite her surroundings. "I saw the center's opening on TV," she said as I sat down. "It's beautiful, what you've created. What Jennifer's story is still creating." "The foundation is expanding," I told her. "We're opening satellite centers in other cities, developing ethics curricula for schools. Your case files have been invaluable in showing how fraud evolves, how to stop it early." Catherine nodded, then pushed a notebook across the table. "I've been writing everything down, not just what I did, but why. How each small compromise led to bigger ones. Maybe it can help. Others recognize the pattern before it's too late." As I drove home that evening, I passed the high school. The Student Ethics Bowl team was practicing, their voices drifting through open windows. They were debating corporate responsibility, using real cases from Mitchell Industries' history. My phone lit up with messages, Mrs. Myers sharing photos. From the dedication, Emma with news about another company adopting our whistleblower protocols, Claire planning the next foundation event. A community had grown from the ashes of deception, stronger for having faced the truth together. At home, I found an unexpected package. Inside was Dad's old briefcase, finally released by the forensic team. Among his papers was a draft of a speech he'd never given, written during his final days. "Business isn't just about profit. It's about the legacy we leave, the lives we touch, the choices we make when no one is watching. True success isn't measured in dollars, but in the courage to choose right over easy, truth over comfort, integrity over gain." 18 months after Jennifer's body was found, I stood in the newly renovated Mitchell Industries boardroom, facing a different kind of challenge. The Wall Street Journal had just named us Most Ethical Corporation of the Year, and requests for our corporate reform model were pouring in from companies worldwide. The room where Catherine had once orchestrated her fraud had been transformed. Glass walls replaced solid ones, symbolizing our commitment to transparency. The old mahogany table was now in a museum exhibit about corporate fraud, replaced by a modern design that encouraged open dialogue. "Tokyo wants to implement our whistleblower program," Sandra Chen reported, pulling up global expansion data. "And the EU is considering legislation based on our transparency protocols, the Jennifer Myers model, they're calling it." I studied the data streaming across our screens, ethics violation reports, resolution times, financial impacts. Each number told a story of change, of people finding the courage to speak up, of companies choosing integrity over expedience. "There's something else," Claire said, entering with a thick folder. "The first impact report from the scholarship program. Every single recipient has initiated positive changes in their internship companies. The multiplier effect is extraordinary." The report included letters from scholarship students describing their experiences. One had uncovered safety violations, at a chemical plant. Another had reported discriminatory hiring practices. Each story echoed Jennifer's courage, creating ripples of change across industries. My phone buzzed. Mrs. Myers was waiting downstairs. We had a standing lunch date every Wednesday, but today was special. The state legislature was voting on the Jennifer Myers Corporate Accountability Act, legislation that would mandate ethical business practices and protect whistleblowers. "Never thought I'd see my daughter's name becoming law," she said as we walked to her favorite cafe. "Or that her death would save so many others from having to make the same choice she did." Over lunch, she shared news about the Foundation's latest initiative, a support network for families of whistleblowers. "People need to know they're not alone," she explained. "That choosing truth doesn't mean choosing isolation." Back at the office, Emma waited with Detective Chen. The task force we'd established had uncovered a pattern of corporate fraud across multiple industries, all using variations of Catherine's methods. "Your sister's testimony was crucial," Chen said. "She's becoming our best resource for understanding how these schemes work. Some prosecutors are calling her the fraud whisperer." The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Catherine, who had once perfected the art of corporate deception, now helping dismantle similar schemes. Her prison sentence hadn't changed, but her purpose had. Later that afternoon, I visited the Jennifer Myers Center. Students filled the halls, attending workshops on ethical leadership and corporate governance. In the main auditorium, a CEO was sharing his company's journey toward transparency, inspired by our example. My phone lit up with news alerts. The legislature had passed the Accountability Act unanimously. As congratulatory messages poured in, I found myself drawn to Dad's old office, now a quiet study room in the center. On the wall hung 2 photographs: Jennifer's high school graduation, picture next to Catherine's corporate headshot from Mitchell Industries. Between them was a quote from Dad's undelivered speech. "Every choice we make writes our legacy. Choose wisely." Claire found me there, staring at the photos. "The museum called," she said softly. "They want to expand the corporate fraud exhibit. Add a section about redemption and reform." "What do you think Jennifer would make of all this?" I asked. "I think," Claire replied, "she'd be amazed that her stand for truth created such lasting change, that her courage inspired so many others to find their own." As evening fell, I drove to the prison for my monthly visit with Catherine. She was leading a workshop for other white-collar criminals, teaching them to recognize and admit their patterns of deception. "The hardest part," she told her class as I entered, "isn't facing punishment. It's facing yourself. Understanding that every lie we tell writes a story we eventually have to live with." Watching my sister teach truth to others who had lost their way, I realized how far we'd all come. The tragedy that had torn our family apart had also created something powerful, a legacy of courage, accountability, and redemption. My phone buzzed one final time that day, a message from one of our first scholarship recipients. "Just got promoted to ethics officer, using everything I learned from Jennifer's story. Change really is possible, one truth at a time." 2 years to the day after finding Jennifer's letter in Dad's study, I sat in Judge Martinez's courtroom for Catherine's sentence modification hearing. The prosecution had recommended reducing her sentence in light of her extraordinary cooperation in solving corporate fraud cases across the country. The courtroom was packed, not with reporters this time, but with people whose lives had been touched by the changes Catherine's confession had sparked. Mrs. Myers sat beside me, her presence a testament to the complex nature of forgiveness and justice. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began, "in my 20 years of practice, I've never seen a defendant contribute so significantly to the prevention of corporate crime. Ms. Mitchell's insights have led to the recovery of over $300 million in fraudulent transactions and the conviction of 36 corporate executives." Catherine sat at the defendant's table, wearing prison blues instead of her once signature designer suits. Her hair was streaked with gray now, but her eyes were clear and focused as she addressed the court. "I don't ask for forgiveness," she said, her voice steady. "What I did to Jennifer Myers cannot be undone. But every case I help solve, every fraud I help prevent, is my attempt to honor her memory and protect others who might face the choice she did." Detective Chen testified about Catherine's role in developing fraud detection protocols now used by law enforcement nationwide. Sandra Chen spoke about how Catherine's detailed confessions had helped Mitchell Industries create unprecedented transparency measures. Judge Martinez listened intently, reviewing the thick file of Catherine's contributions. "Ms. Mitchell," she said finally, "your crimes were heinous, born of greed and perpetuated through deception. However, your work in preventing similar crimes has saved countless lives and livelihoods." The judge's decision was Solomon-like. Catherine's sentence would be modified to allow her to work with law enforcement and corporate ethics programs during the day, returning to prison at night. Still incarcerated, but able to continue her work preventing corporate fraud. After the hearing, Mrs. Myers approached Catherine, their first face-to-face meeting since the trial. The room fell silent, watching these two women whose lives had been forever intertwined by one tragic night. "Jennifer believed in second chances," Mrs. Myers said quietly. "She died trying to give you one. Don't waste this opportunity." That evening, Mitchell Industries hosted a special board meeting. The company had become a global leader in corporate ethics, our transparency model adopted by corporations across 6 continents. The Jennifer Myers Center had trained over 1,000 ethics officers, and our whistleblower program had prevented an estimated $1 billion in corporate fraud. "We have a decision to make," I announced to the board. "The Jennifer Myers Foundation has received an unprecedented grant to expand our work globally, but it would mean restructuring Mitchell Industries into a nonprofit organization dedicated entirely to corporate ethics reform." Sandra Chen presented the numbers, the impact we could have, the lives we could change. The vote was unanimous. Mitchell Industries would complete its transformation from a symbol of corporate fraud to a force for global reform. Later that night, I visited Dad's grave, placing fresh flowers beside his headstone. The autumn wind rustled through nearby trees, reminding me of that first night when I'd found Jennifer's letter. My phone buzzed with messages, Claire sharing designs for the Foundation's global headquarters, Emma reporting on another corporation, adopting our ethics model, Mrs. Myers sending photos from the latest scholarship ceremony. A community built on truth had replaced one built on lies. At home, I found a letter from Catherine, written after the hearing. "Dear Rebecca, today reminded me of something Jennifer said that night on the bridge, before everything went wrong. She told me that true strength isn't in maintaining a lie, but in facing the truth, no matter the cost. I didn't understand then. I do now. What you've built from the ashes of my crimes is extraordinary. The company, the foundation, the center. They're all living tributes to Jennifer's courage. I can never undo what I did, but perhaps through this work, I can help ensure her death wasn't in vain. Thank you for not giving up on truth, even when it meant giving up on me. Your sister, Catherine." 3 years after finding Jennifer's letter, I stood at Miller's Bridge one last time. The structure had been transformed into a memorial park, its steel frame now supporting climbing vines and memorial plaques. The spot where Jennifer had fallen was marked by a small reflection pool, its surface catching the morning light. The Jennifer Myers Foundation had outgrown its original home at Mitchell Industries. Tomorrow, we would open our new global headquarters, a modern campus dedicated to corporate ethics reform and whistleblower protection. But today, I needed to revisit where everything began. Mrs. Myers joined me at the bridge, her arm linked with mine. She'd become the Foundation's most powerful speaker, traveling worldwide to share Jennifer's story. "It's strange," she said, watching the water below. For 20 years I could barely look at this place. Now it feels like hallowed ground. My phone buzzed with updates. Catherine was leading a training session for FBI agents on corporate fraud detection. The Jennifer Myers Corporate Accountability Act had been adopted by 12 more states. Our latest class of scholarship recipients had just graduated, each heading to positions where they could influence corporate culture. Claire arrived with the final proofs for the Foundation's annual report. The cover showed the bridge at sunrise, but with a new addition: hundreds of paper cranes hanging from its frame, each bearing the name of a whistleblower who had found courage through Jennifer's story. "The museum exhibition is ready too," she said, showing me photos on her tablet. The display included Catherine's original confession, Dad's unfinished letter, and the evidence that had finally brought truth to light. But it also showed what had grown from that darkness: the Ethics Center, the Foundation, the lives changed. Sandra Chen pulled up in her electric car, carrying fresh data from our global initiatives. Corporate fraud rates had dropped significantly in regions adopting our transparency protocols. The Jennifer Myers model was becoming the global standard for ethical business practices. "Tokyo implementing the full program next month," she reported. "The EU's version goes into effect in January. We're seeing interest from emerging markets, too." Detective Chen arrived next, bringing news from the Corporate Crime Task Force. Catherine's insights had helped them prevent another major fraud scheme, saving thousands of jobs and millions in investments. Though still imprisoned, my sister had found a way to turn her expertise toward healing rather than harm. Emma joined us last, her camera capturing the moment for a documentary about corporate reform. She'd won a Pulitzer for her series on whistleblower protection, inspired by Jennifer's story. "The piece airs next week," she said. "We're calling it Bridge to Truth: How One Woman's Courage Changed Corporate America." As we gathered at the bridge, this unlikely family brought together by tragedy and transformation, I thought about the journey that had brought us here, the letter that had exposed decades of lies, the sister whose crimes had sparked a movement for change, the legacy of a young woman who chose truth over silence. My phone lit up with a message from Catherine. "Just finished training the new agents. One of them was a Jennifer Myers scholar. Your work, Rebecca. It's reaching further than we ever imagined." Mrs. Myers touched the memorial plaque, her fingers tracing Jennifer's name. "She wanted to change the world," she said softly. "She has, just not in the way any of us expected." The Foundation's new campus was visible from the bridge, a complex of glass and steel designed for transparency and collaboration. Tomorrow, it would fill with ethics officers, corporate reformers, and whistleblower advocates from around the world. But its heart would always be here, at this bridge where one person's courage had started a revolution. "You know what Jennifer wrote in her last diary entry?" Mrs. Myers asked, pulling out a worn notebook. She said, "Truth is like a river. You can dam it, divert it, try to contain it, but eventually it finds its way to the light." As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the memorial park, I thought about rivers and bridges, truth and transformation. The $2 million Catherine had tried to steal had become billions in prevented fraud. The secret she'd killed to protect had sparked global corporate reform. Jennifer's silenced voice now spoke through thousands of others. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from one of our first scholarship recipients, now a corporate ethics officer in Silicon Valley. "Just prevented another fraud attempt using the Jennifer Myers protocols. Her story saved us. Some legacies only grow stronger with time." Looking out over the water, I saw not just the past with its pain and betrayal, but the future with its endless possibilities for change. The bridge stood as it always had, but its meaning had transformed. No longer a place of tragedy, but a symbol of courage, truth, and the power of one person's choice to stand firm against corruption. The story that began with a hidden letter had become a global movement. And somewhere, I like to think, Jennifer knew that her sacrifice had not been in vain.